welcome everyone to Ethos Podcast, episode 24. Getting close to that number 25. I don't know if it's magical or not. And we've got three guests today. Well, actually, two guests and a co-host who's like a stink that follows you around. He's always just there. No, he's a lovable guy called Mr. Duck. How you going, mate?
Not stinky. That's what I'm not doing. But yeah, what a fucking introduction. I'll remember that for next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do your kids go inky bum bum? That's what my kids do.
No.
No. All right, get that in their vernacular.
Mine are intelligent. No.
Mine are intelligent. Oh, I love it. So we've got one of our returning guests, Mr. Vander. How are you going, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks for having me on.
And for some reason, even though I called out Vander, I kind of had to jump in. So a new person to the podcast, but I'll say a key member in terms of cheerleading in Ethos is Mr. Conor Keane. How are you going, mate?
G'day, everyone. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's pretty generous. I'll take cheerleading.
Well, that's your literal nickname.
Yeah, it makes sense. I do like a bit of tournament coverage when I can. Have a few beers and just sit down and see how everyone's doing.
Yes, your banter is the best that I've noticed. I know me, Duck, and a few others up here in Queensland. You know, we can give people nicknames and things like that, but some of your banter is like Shakespearean.
Well, I do love the mighty bard, so being compared with him is very flattering. Appreciate that.
Alrighty. So tonight we're going to cover three main things. So we're going to talk a little bit about Conor, just to make sure that people out there know who he is and what he ate for breakfast. Then we'll talk about our recent Gladiator Gaming event. So the team event that Duck and I talked about, I think it was 2 weeks ago. And give you some updates about what happened there. A bit of a spoiler alert. That's very good things. We'll also do a quick side step to Vander and his mighty run with 1,000 Suns that may have come to a short end. How would you describe it, Vander?
Spoilers. That's what that is.
Spoilers. Okay, no, he was mighty, and Magnus did lots of things wrong. And then the main topic, I'm assuming we're going to get there tonight, which will be being tilted in a team game. So one of the things that we have covered in the past is, things to prevent yourself being tilted, or just, to be focused in the game. So I know we've covered that in a couple of podcasts, but team events is a little bit different for anyone who's played the team events. And generally, the whole thing about, I think I talked to Ben about this, which is, the thing about a team event is that even though if you're getting absolutely dunked on, you're going to stay in the game to get that 1 or 2 points for your team, because that's sometimes only, every point matters in essence. Now, that's the general mentality. And
that's what you should do, isn't it, Simon?
Yeah, it is. And I would say, because I've been playing this game 26 years, right? And we'll say the 12 or 13 years in teams, like in team environments. And I will say 99 out of 100 games, I have that mentality. Now, what happens when you lose it? That's the main crux of the topic, because there was one game that I lost it, and it hasn't happened to me for like 4+ years. So I couldn't think of anyone better to join me than Duck. And then, Vander, of course, he's always got something to say about stuff that happens in people's brains. And then we just drag Conor along, because why not?
Yeah.
So that's tonight's episode. Hopefully you guys find some value out of it. That's the main thing that we focus on here is to have some of these episodes to be really evergreen, or at least most of them actually, to be evergreen, where like this concept that we're going to talk about, it's relevant outside of 40k, outside of hell, tabletop gaming. You could think of this, you're playing StarCraft in a team environment or something like that. It's the same kind of mentality. Anyway, so Connor, jumping in, mate. What got you into do a quick intro of yourself, and then what got you interested in into Ethos?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'm sorry if I'll just say this as a premise. I'm sorry if there's a bit of noise in the background here. My daughter spilled coffee beans all over the ground at home and ate some of them, and so she's up and very, very noisy. So I've had to come out to the park to do this recording, which is not ideal. And what did I eat for breakfast? It was I think the first question you asked. I actually had a pizza bread from Baker's Delight, which is surprisingly good. In terms of 40K, I played a lot when I was younger, probably from the age of about 12 to 14 up until about university. I think like most people, it sort of fell by the wayside there. I'm not as consistent as you, Simon, with that impressive sort of streak of playing for that long. But I got back into it when Gilliman was released. I thought it was pretty spectacular. I think a Primark released, and I managed to drag one of my mates, Jake, and of course Vander, along for the ride when we started playing games quite casually at my house, going to CanCon and so on. And that sort of led to the competitive streak in me to come out, which of course resulted in me meeting a lot of the crew at Ethos. And I think really Chris and I, and they call it the Leviathan list, but we did devise this in his garage quite separately to them. We never get the credit that is due for that, but he won CanCon that year, and I think my best ever performance. This is one with Chile. He was in the top 10 there, and through that, I guess, through Chris, I got to know most of the lads from Ethos, and the reason I was interested in joining is it's a bit more of a sort of a positive mentality in relation to what we would like to bring to the 40K community that transcends the parochial boundaries of states, of New South Wales, Queensland, and so on. And to be honest, I haven't been as active as I would have liked to have been in relation to singles or team events, just due to the birth of my daughter, who takes up a lot of my time. But I'm hoping that I'll rise from the ashes and sort of become a bit more involved with this podcast, and some other commitments being the first step. So that's me. If you have any other questions, Simon, just shoot them at me if you like.
Yeah, sure. So you got back. How did you get into 40K originally? Like you said, you got back with Gilliman, and you just picked it up when you were a teenager, or? I
think when I just went, when you see the because it's almost like sort of a temple for nerds, those games workshops back in the day, right? Like you didn't really have anywhere else you could get these products. I actually got in through Hero Quest, if you guys remember that game that my daddy bought for me, and I really enjoyed that. And through that, started going to Games Workshop, and I actually got into the Square-based sort of fantasy games, and then looked into 40K and enjoyed playing with those GWs. Unlike some of the boys in our team, are not banned from any of the Games Workshop stores. I don't, but so yeah, that was really what started it. It was just, I don't know, it was sort of a renaissance sort of period. I would say about 4 or 5, maybe even, I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago now, where the miniatures and the standard, I'm not that sort of nostalgia-driven person that thinks that the old metal miniatures are good. I think that they've just really, really upped their game in terms of the way that they do all of the different armies now, and the online presence that you get through podcasts and YouTube battle clips, all that sort of stuff. It's just a lot more accessible and sort of vast as a community, and I think that really it inspired me to get back into it.
Excellent. And have you got any claims to fame of things that you've achieved, like in the competitive side of 40K? Outside of Pro
man.
No,
that was it. I think the CanCon, I think I came 7th or 8th. I've won a few RTTs and done reasonably well at a few GTs, but nothing major really. I don't get tilted. I get stressed, and we'll talk about this when we get to the team environment about letting people down. I found that quite difficult, which is why I sort of step back. But we'll get to that soon. So yeah, nothing sort of major. I'm not Michael Vanderhausen, the top player in New South Wales or anything like that. But I've really enjoyed
himself down there.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the competitive community and sort of getting involved in that way. But I guess I'm very good friends with Chris Wright as well, and I do sort of play testing and that sort of stuff with him when I have the time. And I like to sort of, I would say, live vicariously through the people that are very good at the game, I guess. Because I feel that sometimes the amount of time that I would have to put in to get to the level that you boys are at would just be too much at the moment. But I still want to sort of keep my finger on the pulse.
But do you guys? I know, Vander, you talk to Conor often. Do you have any questions that you've been wanting to ask him, or you've thought in your conversations was interesting for other people to know?
No, not necessarily. I mean, Connor and I are literally just best friends, so we just hang out a lot. I think the way that he approaches the game is a lot more fun oriented as opposed to competitively mindseted. But I think Connor's attitude towards being the best and not being the best has changed over the years, which I think would be kind of interesting for him to talk about.
Anything to add?
Yeah, no, it definitely has. There was that sort of, I think when Chris and I were preparing for CanCon, I was going in to win it, but it was just, it was great, and I loved every minute of it, and I'm a very competitive person, and I think I often get this sort of mentality, is if you can't be the best, you take a step back and become the cheerleader, so to speak. So, but look, I would like to sort of take a more competitive angle on things, and I think that would come through teams, because you can sort of specialise and you rely on your teammates a bit more. So yeah, I think bringing the fun is nice. I like the idea of coaching. I think it's very good as an aspect and a way of learning about these things. But for me, it's end of the day, it's a hobby, and I think I'm lucky in the sense that I'm being part of Ethos. That while there are people that have very, very high accolades within the group, Eric, of course, is another good mate. Duck, Simon, pretty much everyone with me, I should say. It's nice to sort of have the community that we have. I would say where it doesn't really feel like I'm sort of lesser because I don't have that tournament success, and I think that's really important for a hobby like 40K to blend that competitive streak that people have with others who are sort of quite good as sort of in their support roles, which I'd say that's what I feel more than anything else.
Cool. And I like, Vander, when you said, Connor, he's my best friend, and Chris Wright just has a little tear going down. It's like, do I not mean anything to you?
I can come on and defend himself later.
Second best player in New South Wales too now, after Vander.
Just
doing the Wolverine meme.
Down here.
Yeah, he's into Magic the Gathering these days, so.
Watch out.
Sorry, what is it? You play Magic? Looks cool, mate. Looks sick, man. Yeah.
We treat that far too seriously man. Too, to be honest.
I love it. Duck, do you have any questions for Connor, mate?
I think Connor takes out the best looking Imperial Knight in Australia. This purple Imperial Knight's gorgeous.
Yeah, we can attach some photos of that to the podcast if you like. And the shield. I should say that. Yeah, I love the painting.
That deserves to get spread out there.
Yeah, for sure. I love painting. That's sort of one of the really big draws. I'm not. Vander's obviously won a lot of awards and that sort of stuff, and Duck's a professional painter. I'm not sure. I think, Simon, you employ your kids as slave labour to paint your armies, but I'm sort of somewhere in between.
I pay them in Pop-Tarts, excuse me.
Yeah, well, Pop-Tarts. Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough, right? Levi jeans, Pop-Tarts, whatever you want to do. But, I really enjoy the hobby aspect and airbrushing, and my purple knight I'm very proud of. Very disappointed, that the big knights didn't get a points deduction in the latest sort of what do you call it, the fix in terms of data slates. But yes, I'll maybe link a few things that my Bellacore and other things like that. I know that you boys have done that to a couple of the fellas that have been introducing themselves, and this is very much a belated introduction from me, which I would have liked to have done a lot earlier in the formation of this podcast. But yes, thank you for pointing out that. I do love my hobbying, and that is probably my favourite model, along with Bellacore, that I've painted.
No, my question is, when are we going to see you at a Queensland event?
Mate, I've got a friend who Vanderhausen knows as well, who's into his trout fishing, and he's trying to convince me to come up to Queensland for that. So I reckon I'm on holiday in July, and I can double dip and maybe come to a team event, if not to play, certainly to commentate and watch for Ethos. I reckon July I'll come up to Queensland, go up to the barbarian north. Why not? Be uncivilized for a few days.
Yeah, if you're coming up here to kill some trout and gut them, you might as well play against Duck with the towel and do the same thing. Fish people,
or just slap it in a rusty. No, you slap it in a rusty can, and bloody Nick Argent will eat it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that man's stomach. I don't know what that thing. That's the hardest working stomach of any man that I've ever known. He'd be great in Fallout. I've been watching that series. Like, that man would have no issues in a sort of dystopian universe. He'd have his canned tuna. He'd be happy that his mum gets one.
Hey, he'd be walking out there in his bloody pink shorts and thongs, just up on the surface.
It's almost like what's it called? Fortnite in real life. You know how you kind of wandering around wearing stupid costumes and all that, and you just go into like a house, you break open a couple of boxes, and you've got like a can of tuna and just down it for some HP. Like, that is Nick Argent to a T.
Shout out to Josh Brady as well, though. Josh Brady is also an epic sort of man when it comes to the food at the tournaments. Maybe that could be a topic for the future. Is what do you have for lunch tournaments, and why do you do so?
I tell you what, that man could run quality control on the Woolworths bakery, because he'd know it inside and out.
Absolutely, mate. And the cocktail frankfurts, the man knows what's up.
Mate, don't need any sauce on those. You ruin the flavour.
Absolutely, and you can see, Simon, that I've already completely derailed this podcast in terms of the topics we're now talking about. So if you want to get back on track, please do.
This is literally the podcast. What are you talking about? The main topic is just a teaser for people to stay along with us. This is the podcast, just us talking about random shit.
Yeah. If you need tournament food tips, contact Nick Argent for canned food goods, and if you need and Josh Brody when it comes to baked goods, those two lads, both great lads, will give you the sort of the ways of how you prepare.
I reckon we had the Nick Standing, playing a game of bowls for an actual 40k game to determine was it Queensland Masters? I can't remember. It was a game nonetheless, and we were at a bowls club, and they played bowls to determine the winner of the game. Nick Argent with Josh Brody, just having a sit down. They would don't actually play the game. They just eat random foods until one of them says taps out. I can see that happening.
Yeah, it could be a good Spider-Man. I'd subscribe to that.
Get them an OnlyFans.
Yeah, so Gladiator Gaming.
Get those men sponsored, damn it.
I love it. Awesome. Well, yeah, okay. So just before we go on to the next topic, Conor, do you have any quick plugs or anything that you do in your space that you want other people to follow along with you?
Great. I'm an ex-academic becoming a lawyer, so I don't really have anything that is relevant to plug. In terms of social media, I just downloaded the Discord app to do this, so no. But follow Ethos. Ethos is great. And the New South Wales tournament community side is also good if you want to get involved in that scene, which is very welcoming. I'd recommend that. And what is it Ben Way does? He does something as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, Ben does something. Who knows?
He burns himself with oil mostly.
It's called Down Under. I don't know what it's called. But yeah, that's pretty good too. And Ask Ben, he loves it. So just get in contact with him if you hear about that.
Excellent. Alrighty. So, Duck, mate, take us through Gladiator Gaming. Intro it for anyone who wasn't here last time, and people, maybe New South Wales blokes who are listening to this who don't necessarily know everything about it. And yeah, do the intro, mate.
All right. Gladiator Gaming, 5-player team event about 2 weeks ago. One of Josh's that runs every sort of 4 to 6 weeks. 140 players. All the clubs had rep banners like hanging up as you walked in. We'll pop a photo of that in the show notes. So it looked really professional. Venue did a good job to keep all the air conditioning up and going, so it's a bit of a hot day. So run really smoothly. Simon and I will give you a bit of insight on our lists. He said he had a couple of things he wanted to keep an eye on. I had a fresh slate on the guard. But other than that, really great event. Mm-hmm. Simon,
yeah,
what was your thoughts?
I got to say, those banners, I saw it on kind of halfway through day one. I walked out to just go have a piss, and I got smacked straight into a bunch of banners, and I saw Ethos on a whole banner there, and I was like, fuck yes. I didn't know Josh had planned that, but it was so awesome. I took a whole bunch of pictures, and I showed Sonia, and she's like, yeah, that looks awesome. That was probably the best bit. Because we've done like 3 or 4 episodes about how the cool thing about the Southeast Queensland, scene in essence is that we've got this kind of, sharpened steel idea with all the clubs, and we've got friendly rivalries between each other. And this is just enhances that. It doesn't exacerbate or, make it worse. This is actually enhances that to show these are all the clubs that have been represented here. And everyone's kind of grouping up and having that camaraderie outside of just the team event. I just loved it.
And it's not just like, and the team reps aren't just like one team of 5. Like the low rollers put in 3 teams. We had 2. Ipswich had 2. Yep. There was multiples of each club. It was great. It was huge.
Absolutely. Connor, you were saying something?
No, I think I love that. We don't really have that in New South Wales, so we should steal that as an idea. But it sounds like Game of Thrones when you see the banners as you're walking up. Pretty inspirational. Give you some more motivation to win.
Yeah, 100%. I just
gets the juices flowing.
My head literally went there. Yeah, and again, like just a reflection. I really thought it was funny that the same weekend that we had the Gladiator Gaming one, the Americans had their kind of American team championship thing. So they still 5-man teams, and they only had 20 teams where we had 24. So they only had 100 people, and we had 140 people. Same amount of...
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's like they're pulling from an entire country of 10 times our population, and we can still pull more just from Southeast Queensland, which I thought was fantastic. Alrighty, so the events itself, I'll just quickly talk a little bit about my armies and some of my games, but then Duck, you talk about yours, and then just overall from a team point of view. And Vander and Conor, just jump in if you have any questions in particular. So 2 weeks ago, or whenever we did the last podcast, the main things I was talking about when I was going through my Drakari list was how I kind of gave up some of the fight first tech that Chris and I talked about like 3 episodes ago, to get a few units that I thought might help. And so what am I talking about there? So for example, getting an additional succubus to attach to the second half of my witch unit, having 3 units of Court of the Archon rather than what I took for the actual event, which is 1 Court and 2 Incubi, things like that, right? And
what was your role in the team?
my role was kind of a generalist. Like, I could take most combat heavy armies, but just be kind of in the mid pack and be annoying in essence. Like that's how I developed my list, to be like that. Nothing in particular to go hunt after outside of, say, Sisters of Battle, Orcs, things like that, where they don't want to necessarily deal with fight first. Those changes that I made for this event, that I'm fixing up for this next event, that's because Gladiator Gaming is happening again very shortly in 2 weeks' time. Those changes, I think they hurt me a little bit, because I talked about it, that the fight first components in Drakari, I think is for my playstyle. I just want to make it very clear, for my playstyle, it's the way I want to go about doing that kind of real full MSU, annoying units, and having fight first everywhere. So it makes you trying to engage me real pain in the ass, right? Because you don't know what to target, and if you go and target something, I'm usually going to hit you first. So it kind of makes I won't say it makes the maths wrong, but it makes, when you're playing against me, a pain in the ass, because even when you do deboat me, the stuff inside is going to hit you first. You get the idea, right? I took a kind of half-half list because I had some Incubi, etc., and I don't think it was necessarily the right choice. Now, I did well in the event itself, but I really think for my playstyle, leaning into that fight first is the way to go. And for the next tournament, I've already done that, and I've had 1 game with the new list, and I did quite well. My opponent, he was feeling a little bit sorry for himself afterwards, but he played well. So I'm going the rambling, but I just want to make it clear that it's not the only way to play Drakari. One of the cool things, because Brian and I had a conversation, so Brian was part of Eric's team. He ran some bigger units, like a big 10-man brick of Incubi, and he uses Raiders as well. And he went all haywire on his Scourges. And that list was absolutely hunting things like triple monoliths and stuff like that, whereas my MSU list didn't want anything to do with those triple monolith lists. And what was really cool, like we were both talking about stuff, we were talking about how we were being used in pairings, and talking with Eric, for example, he didn't want to use Brian against Thousand Suns, because Thousand Suns love having big chunky units that they can just target down and nuke, because anything they look at, that it will die. But they hate the idea, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, Vander, when you get to your bit, but they don't like just lots of MSU everywhere, and having to kind of split fire into multiple different things, and not being able to kind of just drill into one big target type thing, and use your spells and your
You definitely don't want to be forced into a trading game because you don't have enough assets to trade. And that's what you're doing with MSU. You're scared as fuck.
Yeah, and so Brian and I were talking about this, where Brian didn't want to have a bar against Thousand Suns, but wanted to go and hunt the triple monoliths, or like the big target things, because he could deal with that. Whereas I didn't want the things that he was hunting, but I played Thousand Suns twice and beat them both times because I've got just like full MSU, etc. So I'm leaning more into that, and I just personally love that even an index book has 2 viable lists in a team's environment, and to me that concept is really, really cool. So yeah, that's kind of my summary.
You were both running the new detachment, eh?
Yeah. We're both using the new detachment, but just I've gone full MSU. and the tweak I'm going to be doing is just leaning even more into fight first, and I just have to accept that there is going to be some matchups that I am not a fan of, and as we just talked about, the new points changes, the stuff that I'm scared of, all of that got nerfed. Like triple monoliths now like 60 or 70 points more expensive, something like that. Anyway,
Stans.
yeah, Catans, they've gone up like 40 points all up for the
Poor monoliths. They've never had much time in the sun, have they? Really?
Yeah. Anyway,
They got a little run and then they're back. Got gone.
Yeah. That's my general summary. I can do specific games and things like that, but I don't know how interesting that would be for people. But just to kind of wrap that up from when we talked about it 2 weeks ago, I really like to fight first. I'm going to lean into it. I played 2000 Suns, a Blood Angels, an Orc, and then Eric's Tyranids. And 4 games out of 5, I felt really comfortable into. Like, it's just like, that's what my list was designed to do. Kill these kind of Space Marine-ish type bodies that are combat orientated. And I did that, and I did well. All right, Doc.
Last time you spoke about like the Kronos, and you were going to keep an eye on it if it was worth leaving it in the list or taking it out. How did it go, or what did you think of it? Looking back on it now.
Yeah. Well, the Kronos, I think it's mandatory if you're taking Scourges. I've come to accept it that if I'm going to take Scourges, outside of say just a single unit of Scourges, but if I'm going to take any Scourges, in say 2s or 3s, like the bigger, like multiple units of them, I think I just have to have the Kronos. I have written a list.
Just pay the Kronos tax.
Yeah, it's just 50 points to in essence farm 2 to 3 pain tokens. I think I've just had to accept it. I'm so close to running out every single game in terms of pain tokens that if I didn't have a Kronos, I generally won't have 1 or 2 for when I actually do the hit, like the big hit, and I need it in combat. And so if you're going to have multiple units of Scourges, then they're going to be extremely underwhelming if you don't have a Kronos, because then you're not going to be pumping them full of pain tokens, and if they're not getting pain tokens, why even taking them, in essence? Like, that's what I've just have to accept. Now, I have written another list, so I'm currently on version 18. Version 19 has dropped all the Scourges and the Kronos, and I've gone a couple of units of Talos. They're not as good, but they don't need to be supported really in any way. They exist. They're annoying, and if they kill something, great. So yeah, that's my summary of Kronos's. They're a necessary evil if you're taking multiple units of Scourges.
And what are you going to change going forward?
Yeah. Well,
What's the next version of your list look like? Post data slate points.
Well, Dark Elf didn't get touched, so it's for me. I think I mentioned it. It's just drop Drazar, and swap Drazar for a Succubus to attach to the second half of the Witch unit. I also now have a couple of points to upgrade the 2 Incubi units to 2 Court units. And then I've got 10 points left over, which I've dropped my second unit of Cabalites for 2 units of Rax. And all of those gives me a bunch more fight first, plus a few extra triggers of pain tokens.
Beautiful.
That's right. And we'll see how it goes in 2 weeks' time.
Conor, Vander, anything to add?
Not really. I mean, to be honest, I don't really understand Drukhari, so I'll probably just get tabled by them when I first fight them.
He's like, yes, words. Yeah.
Look, Simon, you sound pretty excited, though. I'll say that. For your new list, and that's good to hear. That's my contribution.
Yeah. I mean, you can hear in my voice, and Vander, from our conversation, what was it, like 6 months ago or whenever it was, I definitely am more interested in the game right now. It feels
Yeah.
the current
you are
detachment. Yeah, the current detachment of Dark Elder with the strat that lets me kind of jump out of a vehicle after it's moved, plus then punching something, and then either jumping back into the vehicle, like 11 inches equivalent, or if it's a witch unit, go forward, onto your objective and steal an objective. Like, there is so much kind of jankiness that you can do now. That skill expression that we kind of talked about,
That's all movement, which is what you love.
it's actually possible with this detachment. So with the Dark Elder, and in this detachment in particular, you can actually do skill expression in the game. And Duck, me and you, we did a whole episode about skill expression, and it's why I'm not fully captured with 10th. I'm not all the way back like I was, say, a year and a half ago, but I'm about as close as I can be in this where I'm actually playing the game.
Yeah, it sounds skill intensive, a bit like Imperial Knights, I guess, in that respect.
That was a joke for people listening. I love it. All right, Duckmate, tell us about the Guard and how they were awesome.
They were actually kind of fun to play until I got to like game 2. If you ever thought to yourself, what is it like to just play indirect guard with recycling Kaskin? That's pretty much the extent of that thought line. It got so boring, so boring. It just did the same thing. It just bubbled out your artillery with like Bulgren pits, recycling Kaskin that just trade up from grenade stratting and haywire mining. And sometimes if you need it, like a tank shock from a Chimera coming over the top, and you'll just kill stuff. And they kill the unit, comes back. And if they don't kill the Chimera in an activation, stuff jumps in and out of it and just doubles down on abilities, and it gets a bit out of control. The Medusas were good, but when they rolled shit, they rolled shit. Like, I had one turn where I shot all my indirect at like a gladiator, and I killed it, like, just. And the next turn I shot another one, I did 3 wounds to it. So I was like, it's so swingy. But then I quickly found out, like, the damage thresholds increase as soon as you go, like, as soon as you get a Scout Sentinel on someone, you do sort of like 15-20% more damage. And if you get a Scout Sentinel and the Master of Ordnance on someone, you pretty much just kill it. There's not really that much that survives it. The Bulgren were really good. I didn't value them on paper when I put the list in, but Alex from Ethos was telling me to, you got to put them in, you need them. And they were just so good to just jam up objectives with like 18 wounds of 4 up Imbo, -1 damage, and 6 up Fiona Pain. And they're all like strength 7, 2 damage, so they could sort of like clobber through some stuff. So they were good to just like, jam up objectives, tag stuff, kill little 5-mans and just get in the way. The single Chimera was pretty sick. It always started 10 Kaskin in it with no characters, so it could scout. So Chimera would scout up 6 and then pick up like the Castellan on foot by himself and the Primaris Psycho on foot by itself. They would both embark in, and then the transport would go to give them more stretch on their orders or the shooting. So I did it heaps of times where I'd jump the Primaris Psycho, Chimera, and then order the Chimera to get +1 to hit. So the Primaris Psycho shooting out the top is hitting on 2s. It's like D6 +3 blast at -2, 2 damage with dev wounds. So you like plink a couple of dev wounds off some people. So I caught out Steve when I was playing against his triple land fort. So I pulled the Psycho across, got a little beat on the back of the land fort, and put 3 dev wounds through on it. So I did 6 damage to it, which is pretty huge. The command squad with the deep strike denial from the attachees, plus the squad to put it all into to get your 24-inch orders is such like a bit of a... It's such a points sink. It's like 180 point tax to make Solar better. so it kind of makes Solar like 300 points. Just kind of hurts the wallet a bit. But it's also a bit of a linchpin unit. It was able to block off so many corners and so many angles. So when you have your Mystic at the front of your unit and you tuck it just behind the edge of a corner of terrain, usually 9 inches someone could walk in from Strat Reserve and still see you, but at a 12 inches they can't come in 12 inches away and draw a line of sight around a corner. So that Mystic, that one little model at the edge of your command squad, blocks off a whole side angle of the table, and you don't have to commit any resources for it.
And is that Deep Strike
I did it again.
Only for the Mystic or the whole unit?
It's just the one model, so you've got to be really careful where you place her, or it, or whatever it is. But it's on a 25mm base, so it's a tiny little model, and you can pre-measure your line, your angle, put your dice out 12 inches, pre-measure with your tape measure, cut off your line on the corner of the terrain, and just put the Mystic in the little pizza wedge. So she can't be seen, or it can't be seen, can't get within 12, and that whole corner is blocked off. Can't be charged. You already then know your line where they can come in, so you can draw your angles, so you can save your artillery. So it just helps you bubble your artillery out, which is huge.
You drop a game, Duck, or did you just crush?
No, I won. I just had it. I think I went down 2 rounds, but my losses were like 12-8s. But all of my wins, I was scoring like 95s to 100s. I just couldn't stop the people scoring. So I'd get my full 100 and someone get, like a 70. And you don't end up with a massive differential. But they usually took something out of the Matrix for us that like no one else really wanted to play.
Scary list to just see them theoretically fight, so most people want to avoid it.
Yeah, well, I played against when we played against Eric's team, he had the Votan with a triple land fort and like 15 bikes. And he had to start all the bikes off the table because they just get indirected and killed in a turn. And he sort of just tried to muscle me with just 3 forts, and it took like a turn and a half to kill one. And by the time I popped my tank commander out to shoot the other one and trade back, I ended up trading up, and he sort of just ran out of resources. But even then, he thought he could, sit there and just passively score. But so does the guard. But if you don't actively score against it, and you just sit there and try to muscle through the artillery, you kind of just lose the attrition game. You need to pressure it, even with just shit, with chaff. Like, you just need to tag anything and just get in its way.
I know it was useful.
I went third.
That was the one thing I remember, just because not that many, kind of like what Vander was just saying, is like no one really wants to. Like, I know I didn't when our opponents had guard, I didn't want to do anything to do with it. Just like when you can deboat me for pretty much free, half my army rules go away, and then you can kill me, and the rest of my army rules go away.
It's funny because the things that the guard were good at were also the things that the guard sucked at. So, like abusing your activations of putting stuff inside of other things on objectives, and then trying to play around the lone ops with the Gaunt's Ghost. That's what guard also can't beat. So if you play against someone that has a couple of chaff units that a lone ops or a couple of lone ops, the guard can't stop them from scoring, which kind of sucks. There's a very key sort of loophole in the list.
Would it also be for things that can res and stuff like that? Like, I've got Urian in my list to do that. Elders would have like Fugan and Phoenix Gems and shit like that.
They're not too bad because you usually kill them in the shooting phase. And then you just charge them and tank shock them, and you can melt-a-mine someone in like the charge phase,
but wouldn't
or in
you
the
be able
combat
to do
phase.
The same thing with the lone op stuff?
Yeah, but you can't get close to them. You can't shoot them. Like, it doesn't have enough resources to dedicate to shove something at a lone op, because your artillery can't hit them. You don't want to give up whole castle unit just to kill like one lictor.
Oh yeah. So you're saying say Fugan, you're using artillery to kill it initially, and then your combat will finish it off. Whereas lone op stuff,
Yeah.
your artillery can't be used. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, so to try to kill a lone op like that, I have to dedicate a resource of like a Cascade unit or like a Bullgren unit. I have to run them where someone else wants me to go to try and kill this resource, just to stop them from scoring. And it just never works. You never trade that up. It's always a down trade.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, Conor or Vander, do you have any questions about our illustrious guard? Or any sum up, Vander? Or,
Were you guys on the same team, or did you guys
yeah.
play on different parts of Ethos?
Yeah, we're on the same team.
Yeah, okay. Who
So
was
it
the other
was-
parts of your team? Who's the other three players?
So it was what? Me, so me, Alex, Simon were the Ethos members as such. And we had Michael Magentas, he's sort of, I don't think Michael plays under a club.
No. And Jacob.
And Jacob from the Low Rollers.
Well, I
What
think
were
it's-
they playing?
Jacob is almost he's an honorary Ethos member. I'm going to give it to him.
So you guys had
He
guard,
wears-
Dark Eldar.
Go Duck.
Alex was playing Sisters, so typical sort of Sisters list. Michael had a mixed bag Eldar, and we had just a regular sort of orcs. Yeah, was it like a truck orc style list? I can't remember what he was playing.
Yeah, a normal orc army. Whatever you imagine orcs, that's what orcs are.
Who did you guys put up
Yeah,
first, typically?
I don't think that we had a single person who always went up. I think Michael went up a couple times because with Eldar, if he got the table pick that he wanted, he could make a okay matchup better. But other than that, it kind of just circled between, like, there was no one in particular that was going up first. We didn't have like a guaranteed defender.
I think it's worth noting,
all right.
like, about the tables. Because the tables are set up where you got 1 heavy, 3 medium, and 1 light. Yeah, you find a bit of a trend where people their first put up is either picking either end of the spectrum. Like, the first put up's never picking a medium.
Like
So
a
people
custode
either-
wants a heavy.
Yeah, like they're either leading with a bully pressure combat army that's obviously going to pick a heavy, or they're coming out with like an Iron Storm or an Eldar or a Tau that's going to pick the light, and then you got to play it on light. No one's ever picking medium out the gate. That's what I found.
Yeah, and we saw that pretty much if the opposing team had Ironstorm, because of how much of a car park it is, that would almost be guaranteed to come out first, and it pretty much was. Like, even Eric,
Almost every time, yeah.
even Eric did that with Dave. You know, they had an Ironstorm. They couldn't get heavy. Let's just put it that way. So they had to put him first so that they could.
Yeah, such a liability.
Yeah.
But, when we got to the last day, so when we went round 4, round 5, I played back-to-back Votan. So round 4 against Eric's team, played the triple land fort, and I played on a medium. And he was sort of able to pressure some angles and half stage up to threaten to come out and get lines of sight. And I struggled to chew through them, and I only got a 16-point win. And, big tall Rory from the Low Rollers comes over, and we're having a chat about it. I didn't even realise I was playing Votan. And him and I were having a chat about it because he asked about the artillery and how it goes. And then we come and meet him in the last round, and I get thrown up, and they pair the Votan into me. And he's like, oh yeah, let's play. And I end up picking the heavy table, and he did not see a single thing. He didn't shoot anything, like, all game. I don't think I lost a unit until like turn 3 because he just couldn't get an angle and he couldn't move out of any gap. and it was rough. So table pick, it matters.
Mm-hmm. Connor, anything you had about Duck's list?
Not a huge one. I always find Fulgrim can be difficult to balance appropriately with an army like Imperial Guard. So I was a bit curious whether they're pointed correctly for what they do as a combat durable unit. But I mean, they kind of seem fine from what Duck's saying. That was the only real question I had. It's interesting to see Guard as sort of a staple at team events too, because when I was playing competitively, they were sort of really off the radar. It's nice to see them being in vogue again.
I mean, the future of the Guard is going to look completely different nowadays, because I know, Duck, you've got the points there that they're going up. Was it 120 points? Yeah, your list. So.
Yeah. So that list from the weekend, because almost everything got hit. Like the Kaskin went up, the Borgrim went up, the Basilisk went up, the Manticore went up, the Medusas went up. Like it might only be 5 to 10 points each, but when it's like 7 key units that you got in multiples, it kind of stacks up. But the sun is bright for Guard players, I must say. Depending on how long it takes the Tau, and depending on the cutoffs for like the Drop Bears GT in a couple of weeks, in 3 weeks or so, depending on when the Tau rules come out, I get the points. I might still be playing Guard for singles. I might take Guard to the GT here in Brisbane.
Look at you.
And I got 2 different lists that I could probably... One I got on my shelf pretty much painted. The other one I'd probably be able to smash out in a weekend. Both are very exciting. So stay tuned. Now, actually 3. I got a Sentinel heavy list that could be pretty funny. So apparently I'm a Guard player now. Who knew?
Always were, mate. You always were. Awesome. Alrighty. Well, I mean, just to sum up the Gladiator Gaming stuff, as always, fantastic stuff. Good work, Josh. The bounties was fun. I played in 2 bounty games, one against Mr. David Truman, and I got his bounty, big $40 of game credit, not game credit, store credit, and then I played against Eric, and he had a 117 game win streak or something like that. So in tournaments, and so he had actual cash on his head, so to speak. He's a crazy guy. Alrighty.
Did you get him?
No. We're going to be talking about it very shortly.
And
yeah,
just a side note.
We're going to talk about all this. I was going to say podiums and all that sort of stuff. I presume we'll be discussing later, because it'd be interesting to see like how your boys did compared to some of the other teams and so on. But I presume we'll get to that.
No. Thank you for reminding me. We should say that, because we're kind of wrapping up this bit here. It's so our team, we came first overall, which is good, with 3 wins and 2 draws, but our wins were bigger than the other 2 teams that also got 3 wins and 2 draws. Then we got Sam Lemon's team with the, what are they called? The Veritas something or others? Sorry, I should...
Veritas?
Veritas. I don't know what that means.
Virtus,
I don't know.
Virtus. VIRTUS, TUS, and then Veritas. That sounds wanky.
Sounds like a type of exotic candy.
No, it actually sounds like a LLC from the Cayman Islands that they don't want anyone knowing exactly what they're doing. I think Connor's ears just picked up. It's like, what? So Cayman Islands?
Well, you Queenslanders don't know Latin, and that's fine. It's expected.
Yes, absolutely. It's a dead language from a dead people.
Mate, it's interesting to sort of. I think Sam's from Canberra. It's good to see some sort of incursions from the south into the the dominant state when it comes to teams doing well.
Well, no, you're a bit out of the loop, Connor. Sam moved up to Brisbane like 2 years ago. He lives here now.
But Jesus, all right, well that explains it maybe.
Yeah. This is not like Southerners coming up to try and pip us. No.
Yeah, just part of the cult now, right?
That's right. He is a full-blown Aussie, Queenslander. I think he drinks now 4X. I'm not 100% sure. Sorry, Sam, if I'm besmirching your good name. And then Eric's team with 3 wins and 2 draws. 3 wins and 2 draws, but one of those wins was a small one. So first, second, third, and fourth. Is that right? Yeah. No. Fourth came
2 wins,
3 draws. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not colorblind, but the colors on this BCP is not the best. So yeah, 1, 2, and 3. 3 wins and 2 draws. And we just had some of the higher scores on our wins and draws. And in fact, one of our rounds, actually against Eric, it was 1 point away from a win. So unfortunately, the sticking in and mindset thing that we're going to talk about actually came through. You know how they always say 1 point never matters? Yeah, 1 point matters. It does.
There's a couple of things about the standings. Cool. A couple of things about the standings though is you got 3 teams on 3 wins and 2 draws, but all 3 of those teams drew against each other.
Yep, we all played.
So we drew against 2. Yeah, all 3 of us played against each other, and we all drew against each other. So, our 2 draws were on the winning side of draws. We had a 51 to 54. Next guys were super close, so a 49 and a 46. And then Eric's team got a 46 and a 54.
So it sounds like the better players win.
The better players win, Sucks to suck. Better luck next time.
That's right. Hey, Connor,
but it's good. Those rounds were good against those guys, though.
It was. Connor, you were saying something before?
No, I think that's really healthy. I mean, the fact that the things were so close between teams would be good for Vander and myself and maybe Chris and others to bring a New South Wales team up there for real, rather than these imposters that migrate to Queensland to have a crack against you boys.
Absolutely. And one of the things we kind of started
the
this,
door's open.
Yeah. We started this probably about 2 years ago, where especially us in Ethos, we try to make a conscious effort to not stack too much a team, if you know what I mean. Like we try to split us around. Like I think I've only been in one team with Eric once in the last 2 years. And it's not to say there's any issue between us. It's more just when you start stacking these kind of mega teams, it becomes a little bit disheartening. I find with your opponents, because that's all they put in their minds. Like we had a little bit, because we had 4 of our players who had been on the Australian team, 3 on the Australian team and the other 2 on the Queensland team that had been part previously. So people were suggesting that we were a stacked team, but we just swap a couple of the people around, and then we can really make that stacked if we really wanted to.
You're also cultivating talent in that. I mean, that's something that Eric's always said to me, is when you do mix the teams up and have some people that are slightly more, inexperienced, having the really experienced players on that team, it builds up the community a lot more in terms of the way that they're going to achieve things. And I think that's a great testament to why Queensland is so successful in team games. It is sort of the dominant presence as it is now. Maybe New South Wales will get there, Vander. We don't know, right? Well, maybe. We'll keep working on it. Mainly you. I'll be there as a cheerleader, though, of course.
Yeah, we got years to go.
Well,
but also, if we're putting Ethos teams in, most of the players in pretty much all of the Queensland Ethos players have either been in Team Oz or Team Queensland. So, you're still going to try and keep it club teams. But I think doing 3 of us and 2 outsiders, I guess, is acceptable.
Yeah, no, I don't see it as an issue. Like, personally, I just like it is a thing that you should aspire to. I don't think it should ever be like I really hate the tall poppy idea, and clubs, they should look at us as long as we're not actively going out of our way to pick literally the 5 best players in Australia, and we just everyone's in that team over and over again. We just win every game. Like, even then, I still see there's a benefit to that because it gives you a target to really push yourself to try and beat. But we're not doing that. So everyone should just be like, all right, cool. This is a model of a strong team. I need to work my way up to that. Like they should be using it as a driving mechanism, not as some sort of jealousy or anything like that. Not to suggest, I just want to make it clear to anyone listening, I'm not suggesting anyone is doing that, but if you are even having thoughts of in that vein, stop them. Just focus on getting better.
Good scrub.
Yeah. All right.
And
Vander,
nice little segue
yeah, that's exactly right.
Talking about getting better. Vander, I hear you.
I gotta be
you're on a
honest.
bit of a streak.
This is the only time I've ever played an army in the entire, 3 editions I played this game that does damage. And it feels
It's really proud
weird.
too.
Not proud about it
How many tournament games in a row did you win, mate?
I don't know, ballpark 15. I actually don't know, but thereabouts. Because I was in a team game for a little while, playing Thousand Suns, and then singles for a little bit, and then this GT dropped a game in the finals, I suppose.
Cool.
I'm
Take us through it, mate.
Conor commentary hasn't gotten any.
Yeah, well, Duck and I have
I
been
think
talking
Thousand
a
Suns
lot.
are just good.
Connor and Vander, you take over a little bit. Talk about Vander and how awesome he is. And then
Do you want me to interview Vander on his
go for it.
recent antics with the Thousand Suns?
Yes, please.
I did.
Give it to us, Connor.
I tried to play a Thousand Suns, and I found it a little too complicated. So Vander sort of got the sniff that I was going to get rid of the army, and he actually bought a lot of his Thousand Suns off me, including his demon prince, who's named Magic Michael Vanderbeetle, who is a beautiful sort of proxy for those that enter the tournament scene. You should see it. But I think, what Vander's alluding to is often he likes to do some card mode, and I think that goes for any game that he will play. He won't choose the meta army, the army that's considered to be more powerful apropos singles and team tournaments, but it's almost as if he'll prioritise his play style and having fun, which I think is an excellent attitude to have. But it seems like this has been the perfect storm, right, Vander, where you found an army that you really enjoy playing that is actually quite competitive, and that's how it sort of started.
So I'm going to talk about it from that perspective. Honestly, the GT that I just went to is the first time I did well, and I didn't have a lot of fun. Truly, even though the army is like super complicated, it's really interesting. Every turn is a really fun puzzle. And I'm the only person playing it at the moment now, so it feels rogue in New South Wales. It's too strong. Like, I had 3 games the past weekend that just weren't games. Like, I'm auto-tabling my opponent, and they don't really have a lot to do. And I don't enjoy that, like, at all. I find no satisfaction in it. It's not a tight game. I'm not really focusing or trying to like solve a puzzle. I really, really enjoy being in the back seat, being in like the underside of a matchup and trying to scrounge the points just to get a scrappy little 2-point win in a game that I'm not supposed to win. That's the game that I've been playing for the last 5 years. So, like, for example, the RTT that I 3-0'd, just a simple one, like a month or so ago, I like apologized to my opponents the entire way through that I was playing. Like, I tabled the Black Templar army in 2 turns, and like he at the end of it was just like, I don't really enjoy that game. And I was like, dude, fucking, you know what? Me neither. Like, I really didn't enjoy it. So
what
in
an
the
insult!
teams,
Just two-turn flog someone. Be like, I didn't enjoy that either.
Yeah, seriously. Like, it made me reflect heavily on why I played this game. And
What'd you
and
do
very
next? Did you have a mouthful of his beer next,
yeah.
and then?
No, not at all, not at all.
The
Like,
utter
it just felt
disrespect.
bad. Yeah, because it wasn't a good game. It just wasn't. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure you've had the 125.
Duck knows this because we did a whole. I think it was like our third or fourth episode, Duck, of where I said the exact same thing. Remember with my elder the elder tournament where I was apologizing. I everything you just said, Duck has heard because it's come out of my mouth. Where I went with the triple Wraith Knight and you can't. And I tabled, I think, 3 people within the 2 turns, and I was apologizing and feeling bad, and I just said, "No, I'm not playing Elder anymore. I don't like this." Duck's heard this, and the words have come out of my mouth.
So humble, isn't he?
I think as a broader comment on this sort of on what Van is saying, and again, not to do. I think it's reflective of why perhaps Ethos is a bit more focused on teams rather than singles, because that's ultimately what you're doing a lot of the time in singles, is having a list that is considered in the meta to be overpowered and will just destroy a lot of different lists, whereas there's a lot more nuance with teams. And I presume, I guess the segue for that, Vander, is when you were playing Thousand Suns in teams, while you did, I think, go 5-0 at that tournament with them, did you find it was a little more satisfying, I would say, in terms of the matchups you had to go into and win?
No, interestingly, but what I did find more enjoyable was the team relying on my scores. So that felt like I had a reason to get a 20-0 or a high score rather than just to make the other person feel bad. So even though my opponent wasn't having a good time, I could fall back on the fact that my 4 team members were like, "Oh, you were the sword, you did your job, thank you," and that kind of made it feel a bit better. But in a single setting, I don't get any of that. So just the table itself is just 2 boys having a good time, and neither of us are having a good time. So why the fuck are we playing? That was very noticeable in the GT for me.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. Maybe you have to go back to some sort of esoteric army that doesn't win, but I do think it is sort of solidifies what I'm saying in respect to teams, and I think that's why Eric and all the other lads here always said that they prefer teams. And as you say, and even your opponent at the same time, while you might go in as the favourite, they know that they're not going in as the favourite, right? So that they'll have a better time trying to scrap those points that you speak of.
Yep.
And it does sort of, like in terms of tilting and stuff, we will get to that shortly, but you can see, I mean, I don't know, do you tilt more in teams events or singles? I can see singles as being maybe a bit more emotionally draining and problematic in the way that they sort of work, whereas teams is different because you have a sort of I guess preconceived notion about what you're doing when you're getting into that game beforehand, more so than you would with singles.
Yeah, I think from like when Thousand Suns gets greens right now, they're really strong. And my opponent who knows what's going on will be like, "Man, I'm just in here to get a 5. I'm going to fucking, I'm just going to do my best to get like a 3 or 5." And they're happy when they do. Whereas if you get like a 5 or less in a singles game, it just doesn't feel good in the same way. So I think you're right. There's a lot more room to enjoy your role in that space rather than what's going on in the puzzle in front of you. So certainly, I think the team's environment is more entertaining for a lot of different reasons. Personally, at least, I would take Thousand Suns again to a teams because my team would need it, but I don't think I'll ever take Thousand Suns again to singles.
Yeah, cool.
And like, for example, I'm painting GSC now, right? Because I want to play an army that like basically barely does any damage again.
Yeah, awesome. I look forward to playing against that army again. No, it is fun. You play very different styles as to what I do, and I actually do like occasionally crushing people when I had that opportunity. But I can see how it could be tiresome in the way that things are done. And yeah, I do think teams events are the way forward. I think the world is WTC and so on, and even the Americans are slowly realising that too, with the way that the teams have risen in popularity as something. I mean, the Queenslanders, this is very ironic, considering politics are ahead of the times when it comes to teams being the sort of the mainstay of the way that you play 40k. I reckon that probably takes us to the main topic, doesn't it, of the podcast, and that's we'll settle in this team environment and talk about being triggered and how you deal with it, Simon. So if you want to take it away after Vander's despondence about winning, we'll move into this. And he seems to have been triggered about me telling him that he won too many games. Jesus, mate.
Oh, it's not that he won too many. It's more that he won and it was an empty win.
It's like that. So I'm not very good at building lists, to be clear, as well, right? That's not my fun. I remember when you and I, Simon, spoke about this on the podcast. That was a really important part of your experience. I don't care about that. I care about painting things, and I care about playing the game in front of me. So I steal lists, right? So my list from my team's list for Thousand Suns is point for point Liam VSL's list, who's like the best player in the world, effectively. And so I don't get necessary satisfaction in watching a list that I built do well, because that's not how I play. I get satisfaction in solving the puzzle in front of me. And so that it's when that list that I picked up auto deletes a few things made me realize pretty fast, the satisfaction needs to come from a tight, clean game. So yeah, it's a new learning for me because I very rarely play damage-based armies. And it's it's like probably the last 2 or 3 months.
I don't think best player in the world. That's a big call. I'm sure there's Liam VSL. I've heard the name, and I'm sure he's very good. He might be the best with Thousand Suns, but that's a big claim. And
he's definitely up there. He won the big London GT, the singles, and he won the. What was the other one that he won recently? The Alpine Cup singles, like the WTC off-season bit singles.
Yeah, but what's his undefeated game streak? Maybe he should have a chat to Eric, and they can compare notes in that regard.
Oh, this is why we love your banter, mate. All right.
Well, when I saw that, when I saw the bounty on Eric, I was like, oh yeah, I'd give it a red hot crack. And then I walked past his army, and I saw 3 lone ops. I was like, oh nah, I lost. I was like, someone else can have a crack.
Awesome. All right. Look, we will finally. What is it? It's an hour and a half. No, an hour and 15 minutes. That's very good. We are. We are now cracked over an hour before we get to the main topic. We have done well.
All right, you can do all the editing. You know what's up. You can crush it down to speed if you need to. Just edit most of my remarks out, and it'll probably be about an hour. Nicely vented.
All right. So, as I mentioned before, we've talked about a bit about how to prevent getting triggered or tilted in the game, right? And I don't necessarily want to go over fully that, but feel free if you guys wanted to jump in about some of your own personal things that you do. But the add-on to that I want to add on, to the conversation for any competitive player around the world that I haven't really heard is how do you not prevent yourself getting tilted, but once you are tilted, how do you stay in a game because you're in a team environment where you have other people relying on you, in essence. Now, I know that, and there's an element of this, and this might be in a separate conversation that Duck and I have had a conversation about, which is coaches, in essence, or just a offsider, so to speak, that could really help with this process. Where in WTC this comes up less because you've got multiple coaches around you, and if they can see that that's happening, they can give you a drink, they can do a quick pep talk, they can let you go outside while you take some deep breaths, and they can just observe the the game, so to speak. But in our 5-man team events, we didn't have any coaches, and it's how do you stay in the game, stay mentally engaged, and not become super toxic in essence, or spiral completely out of control where you can't come back even for the rest of the tournament. That's the kind of thing I want to talk about. Yeah, I'll talk about my thing, but that's what I want to talk about, right? It's that added element. It's not the getting tilted in the game. This happens, and there are tools and techniques that you can do to prevent that. It's when you put it into a team environment where you don't have a support person, so to speak, right? What do you do? What can you do? So I'll talk about my situation, and then I really want to hear other people's, and then Duck, he's got an example as well that he can add on, and then Vander, so we've got you on here because you've got some brain knowledge, and as I said, Connor, you're here just to talk shit. So,
Hey man, I have brain knowledge too. Damn it!
I like how Vander laughed at that as well.
He knows I got brain knowledge.
All right, so my game against Eric, and I was really keen to play against him because we haven't played in a tournament game in like 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. So we've played a bunch over the time, in practice games, things like that. So it's not about playing Eric. It's more just we haven't played in a competitive, competitive area. So I was really excited to play the game. And we started getting into it, and from turn 1, I started making a few mistakes, which it happens, and I wasn't particularly pleased that I was making some of those mistakes. And I won't go too much into it in terms of what exactly the mistakes were or what some of the things that happened in the game. But I want to talk about the feelings or like the reactions that were happening within me. I've reflected upon this since, but I just want to kind of talk about the start of the spiral and then the descent, so to speak. So making a few mistakes, a few things aren't going my way. Eric has his first turn, and then a few things happen, and it's like, yeah, cool, everything's going okay. I do my second turn, almost nothing that I'm trying to achieve goes off. Failing 6-inch charges with rerolls and shooting 8 Dark Lancers at a bunch of Tyrant Guard and only killing 1. You get the idea. Just things are not happening. And then Eric gets really lucky in his turn, and I then start the self-doubt where I went into that game thinking, yeah, look, it's going to be a close game. I might be able to sneak a small win to, I'm not actually, I'm making a few too many mistakes. I'm losing pieces, and this luck is, almost like this luck is happening. Just this is happening, and it's not expected. The next element was, I'm actually going to lose big here. And not just am I going to lose big here, but I've done this to myself. Like, I'm playing sloppily here, because I'm now reflecting about my game. And I'm just like, that was really bad. When I say playing sloppily, I'm not doing anything bad in terms of cheating or anything like that. It's more, I'm not thinking about the next turn and where I need this unit, etc., which I normally do. And so by turn 3, the end of turn 3, if this was a singles event, I realized that the game was over. If this was a practice game, I would have called it turn 2. But in a singles event, I saw this game is over. I don't need points. I'm just going to call it, say, good game, mate, you did well, etc. Right? Now I can't do this in my head when I'm in a team environment. I just can't do it. It's just, I've been playing in teams for so fucking long, and I'm not that type of person to just give up. That's what I've said. That's my self-talk, right? And when I say that I'm not that type of person, I'm just, I eventually did, in essence, give up. But there was kind of 3 elements here. I didn't want to give up because the team was relying on me, and as it turned out, if we had 1 extra point, because I lost 1-19, like 19-1. So if I'd gotten 1 extra point, which there was like 7 instances where I could have gotten easily 1 extra point, we would have won the round. And so there's a team pressure. You're a player of the team, so you got the pressure to stay in the game even though you're mentally checked out. Then I've got the kind of reputation, my just general reputation. I'm not the type of person that gives up. Eric, no, because he's been my captain before. He knows I'm not that type of person. If I just give up, I've got that reputation. So I've got my kind of internalized voice kind of going out. And then finally, the added, we'll say, benefit, which is, I don't want to ruin or impact this relationship that I've got with my opponent. He's my friend, and we're going to be friends after this. This game does not determine our friendship in essence. It's not like a make or break type thing. So I had these three things pressuring me in my head, and across all of this, and was I was kind of angry at myself, saying I'm better than this because I have played at a high level in a competitive environment, knowing ways to prevent getting tilted and spiraling and doing all that type of stuff. I've done podcast episodes about exactly this topic, and yet I'm going through this. And so I was kind of like on top of all of those things. I was angry at myself that I let myself get into this situation. And by the end of it, like we got to turn 3, I kind of just stopped talking because I was just trying to internalize, just to hold it together, so to speak. But turn 4 comes along, and I had to tap out, and I said, "Good game, Eric." He drew his turn 5 cards, he scored his points, and I just had to go outside, and I spent like 10 minutes outside just taking deep breaths and just getting back into it. And I talked to Eric after the fact and a few of the other boys because they care about me and they want to make sure that I'm okay. And I said, yeah, look, I know I stopped talking to you, and it's I'm not angry at you. It's more just this is the shit that was going on in my head, right? And so I just want to kind of put it out there. That was the situation. Those were the kind of the 3 elements plus the overarching anger at myself, and I wanted to talk about it with and I have on the day, as well as over the last say week or so with other people. But I want to talk about it because I'm certain that this has happened to other people, in maybe not as experienced as myself, but I'm going to say it's happened to everybody. I'm not going to talk myself out too much. So there's my blah. I would love if I could throw it to Vander, yourself first, and then everyone can jump in.
Look, first of all, thanks for sharing. That was like a pretty important story, which is like pretty vulnerable because you're like basically saying that you like. While I was listening to what you were saying, what you reminded me of? It reminded me of a panic attack. People think panic attacks are just a high amount of anxiety, but it's often you have a panic attack because you're expecting a panic attack. So that's sort of the counterintuitive way of thinking about it, is like you kind of ramp yourself up by worrying about having one. You then have one as a result. And it kind of sounds like your self-talk almost fed into your tilting. Do you know what I mean? Like as you're tilting, you're thinking about tilting, and you're like trying not to tilt because you're not supposed to tilt, and then you tilted because of it. You kind of like put yourself into that. Does that make sense? Does that sound like what happened?
It's interesting. I'll think about it while you talk. Like I'm not going to say yes or no. Like, I think I've had a panic attack once in my life, but I don't know if this was the same thing because I didn't.
It wasn't. They're not even close. Okay. But the way that they feed into each other and the way that your self-talk sounded like it fed into the tilt kind of sounds like it was already foregone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Like I'm making more.
That sort of. Yeah. If you maintain that self-talk, it's inevitable.
Yeah, I actually
doing that.
Sorry, Eric commented on this because it was like turn 4 when I was like I was actually talking to myself and kind of swearing at myself, saying, "Why the fuck am I shooting at this thing? That's so stupid, Simon." Like he was trying to hold back a laugh because he thought I was like on the edge, so to speak. Like, and we talked about it afterwards. It's like, when you started swearing at yourself, I knew something was wrong.
Yeah, right. It almost feels like at that point you've actually already tilted. You just haven't achieved it yet. Do you know what I mean? You haven't gotten full bore tilt.
Yeah. Okay, so it's so the kind of mechanics are like a panic attack, in terms of how you're describing it. What should one do in that
Oh, there's
situation?
no magic here, Simon. No, there's no magic. Like emotions pass, they come and go. As you say, as you talked about before, you're saying like it's easier for other people to come and pull you out of it. So, like a master of insight who knows and has been there before might be able to look at themselves and go, "Fuck, I'm tilting. My solution in this is do X, Y, and Z." But I think like that person's solution, like my solution to experiencing that, will be different to yours. And the only way that I solve that internally is by failing that experience. You know what I mean? So you've been through this thing that you've been through, and then you're reflecting on it, which is obviously the most deliberate, intentional, and effective way to deal with it. But you're dealing with it now by saying, next time I'm in that space, I will do something, or X, or Y, or Z. And that's there's no magic. There's no like easy, simple answer. It's all really personal, and emotions take over you, whether you like it or not. It's going to hit you like a wave. It's going to take over, and the boring answer is it goes away.
Is there? So from your point of view, and I think this to be true because I have had similar-ish situations where that kind of coach or that third person, so to speak, has been able to help with that process, right? If I recognize these same type of things, that I get someone that I know and trust to do, kind of be that, if we don't have like a coach.
What we do in like the business with like, I guess, people that are a little bit less insightful, where they're like sitting down and able to reflect on it, we build like an emergency plan with someone, right? So like when I am tilting, you will see me swear at myself. And when I'm doing that, I need your help to just remind me of where I really stand. And that's like a really good thing that you and your friends or Eric or whatever, instead of Eric now knowing that is this inevitable crash towards massive tilts, next time might be like, hey man, what the hell's going on? Like, why don't you just relax, take a moment, take a step or whatever, or you know yourself what would actually work. Right, because for some people, your friend coming up to them and saying "calm down" would just piss them off more. But other people, it would actually be really useful to circuit break.
Oh, I don't know. It works with my wife all the time, man. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Thank you.
So you end up just being the expert in your own little world of tilt. I think a lot of people think like emotionally rational, opposed, and you have emotions when it's like a bad experience and you're not allowed to have them, or they ruin people's experiences. But I actually think the emotion is just like a really powerful and important, passionate part of what you're doing, and it's also really meaningful to you, and it's not worth ignoring. But more importantly, you can just assume that those emotions will come back for a meaningful reason, and instead of trying to ignore them or avoid them, just letting them wash over you or getting friends to help you through that process and then letting it pass is really the boring answer, which says nothing because it's really personalized and humans are really boring and complicated.
Yeah, but like even just saying it like that, like instinctively, I like if I was just saying that to myself, that's what I would say to myself. I just knew I had to get outside and take deep breaths and just forget the game. Like I knew that was the answer because that's helped me before, right?
Yeah.
Like, normally, if I was playing a singles game, I would either just call it to protect, that dynamic, or I would just put the time on myself and said, all right, I just need 5 minutes, and then I'd go outside, right? Like these are things that we've talked about in previous episodes. So that it's like in my head that wasn't available this time, and now all we're just saying, we're just kind of repeating these things that was like, no, these simple things that we've talked about that sound boring, that is the answer. Like it's not the answer, but that is the unfortunately boring answer. There's no one quick fix.
Yeah, and you're like in this unique space where your coping mechanism for your regulation wasn't available. So now you have to build a new toolbox for when that turns up next time. So you know that your self-talk is going to be the devil of you in a team's game where you're spiraling, and your previous mechanisms won't work. So why didn't they? And then also, if they don't, you need a backup plan.
Yep.
One that you know will work, thanks to the previous failing.
Excellent. All right. Well, jumping to Connor. Connor, do you have anything to add to that bit of a conversation? Then we'll jump to Duck, and then Duck, you can go through your one as well.
Well, I do. On the word tilting, if we talk about the etymology of the word itself, it was in relation to knights when they would take their lance down and sort of go after the other knights. I haven't finished yet. I'm finished. And you had, of course, that there's a famous term from the novel Don Quixote, and Don Quixote was a knight, and there's a term you may have heard it before called tilting at windmills. And what Don Quixote was doing when he was tilting at windmills, he was a knight that had very poor sight, and he thought that they were monsters that he had to go off and destroy. But in reality, they were giants essentially. He thought they were, but they were just windmills. And I think to bring it back to what you guys are saying, when you're tilting, when you're doing something like that, I guess what you're saying, Simon, is that it's somewhat irrational, and even with your vast tournament experience, these emotions can come up sort of unbidden, to make you sort of lose control of what you want to do in the game. And look, I do appreciate that. And while I did say that I think teams are the best environment one can play 40k, and they're also, I would say, the most stressful, because as you say, you're letting people down. There's an important game. There's when you know someone else, and there's reputations and other things on the line. I think it can be, we're supposed to do this hobby a lot of the time to get away from the trials and tribulations of life, but they can often become, I guess, difficult when you're sort of playing in these settings. And I would agree with Vander in the sense that I don't think there's ever a quick fix for this. I mean, obviously, if someone like you is going through this, despite playing for 24, 26 years and so on, but I think even if it's a 5-man, you're saying, look, there's no coaches, no one you can talk to. I think even just going to talk to one of your teammates, or just taking a moment to yourself, can be really, really helpful. Like going for a little walk, going to the bathroom, anything like that. Just being aware that this is an issue, I think is quite crucial, because I've heard horror stories in singles and others of people that blame dice. And look, Vander, because Vander rolls like fives on his dice, I think more than any human I've ever met in my life, I get a bit tilted at that too. And sort of trying to make a joke out of the dice when luck is a factor and so on is something that I've learned to do. But yeah, I don't think there's any right answer or sort of quick fix. It's in some ways it's nice to see that if you're that passionate about this and supporting your teammates, it's sort of probably inevitable that these emotions will rise to the surface, and controlling that, I think, is challenging, and it's good to talk about this. And I think teammates can be really supportive in that sense. If you go up to them and talk to them, they say, it's okay, don't worry about it, essentially. I think that can have a really, really strong effect on my experience with teams anyway. People that you choose to sort of do this with can be really helpful in curbing some of those emotions when they bubble to the surface.
Can I add as well, just like on bouncing off that like the emotion itself is like important, like super cool and fun, and it's part of the same coin that is passion and excitement. So like, when like those guys, those mid-table warriors or even low-table warriors who are like super excited about landing that 9-inch charge, and then they get it, that elation that they experience is the same basic wiring as the tilt that you can experience when you really, really care and you're missing things that you feel like you shouldn't. But you can't really, you can't really like have one without the other. You have to care and enjoy and want the outcome that you want, which is exciting and fun. And then sometimes you don't get that and you feel shit about it because you really cared. And I think like people might think, oh, if I just care less or I get like, if I have less emotions, it'll be better. But I think it's important to recognize that you will lose the fun of winning at the same time. You can't just have all your cake and eat it too in this circumstance. You can't just pick and choose your emotions as you seem fit.
Excellent. Stuff for me to think about. I'll probably even re-listen to this bit to make sure I've fully understood some of the concepts. Duck, anything you want to add about my situation before we jump to yours?
Well, I'd like to say thank you for sharing your experience of how you almost lost us at the event. Segueing off of Connor, and it's all about who you pick to have in your team, and how they can be supportive. That's going to end about now. No, look, I think almost everyone in that round came together and said, there was one extra point they could have scraped here, or a little push they could have done to prevent a point here and there, and that just highlights how important coaches are. Because in a format like ATC or WTC, it would only take someone 30 seconds to get that information, walk 2 tables down and say, hey, we've gone down, we've trended down 2 points on that table. Is there anything you can do? But yeah, in a little 5-man casuals, you don't sort of get that support from a coach, because coaches are not something that we're doing. I mean, they're not forbidden, but just no one brings a coach. They'd rather just play.
And I know we mentioned this at the end of the event, that if we had a coach, both our draws would have been wins, theoretically. Because we're literally, within, 2 to 3 points for one of them and then 1 point for the other one. It's just really interesting, just having that additional player, forgetting the coach or whatever, just that additional player that is kind of caring about the team as a whole. Do you know what I mean? Like when you're the captain and a player at the same time, it's very difficult. Like I know I've captained many teams before. It's very difficult to focus on your game and do the best for your team, because you've got the same pressures, while at the same time caring about the team as a whole. And it was the first time, I mentioned this a couple of times before, but the first WTC that I went to, that I was captain of, that was the one non-negotiable that I was that I convinced everyone to, and it was having the coach. I was the first one to bring the coach, and Big Head was fantastic for when we went over, and we haven't turned back since. Like the very next year we took 2 coaches, then the year after that we took 4, and then 4. You know what I mean? Like it's never gone back to no coaches. And that's a slight aside, but the coach thing I think is definitely something we might talk about in a future episode as well.
Yeah, I was going to say it's really interesting, right? Like you could say, look, if we had a coach, it would have made a difference in terms of points, but maybe Eric's team would say the same thing, right? If they had a coach, maybe there would be point swings
100%.
in that respect that would affect them. And you have this sort of issue that, as you say, sorry about the noise in the background, that could be saved for a future episode, where if someone is allowed to bring a coach, should it be that, everyone else should kind of have to have a coach? Otherwise, this is a completely unfair advantage, and you go in with 5 and a coach. Or I don't think you can ever make coaches mandatory, but it's interesting to think about that and maybe promote that as an aspect of play. And yeah, for emotionally and competitively, and I think it's always difficult when you have tilted, to reflect upon these things and say, oh, if I could have done this or I should have done that. That's an important way to think about these things, to improve yourself, as long as you don't sort of go down that rabbit hole of, sort of taking a flail to your back, so to speak, and it can make you feel worse. And I guess that the question that I'd have to you as well, I don't know what game this was. Did it have an impact on your games henceforth, like moving through the tournament, or were you able to sort of recover and sort of water off the duck's back? And
Yeah. Well,
duck?
I was very proud of myself. That my experience and my kind of self-help moments let me get bounce back in essence. And the guys at lunch, so this was game 4 that happened. So game 5, we had one more game after lunch on day 2, and they were making jokes about they pitied whoever I was going to play for the last round because my bounce back was just going to absolutely crush the person, and that's in essence what happened. So I bounced back very well and was super focused again, and did really well for my last game. But I am proud of myself that I could let that happen, process kind of those emotions, and get past it and bounce back in essence.
Yeah, nice.
And that lunch talk where we were putting pity on your last opponent, that wasn't as much as, poor guy, he's going to get smashed or he's not going to have an enjoyable game. It's more like, poor guy, he's going to get Simon at his best, like tuned in and, wanting to almost redeem yourself. So not an example of, how the opponent's going to have a bad game, but yeah, more for Simon getting back to his A game. I thought that was quite important to highlight.
Yeah, nice.
Thanks. All right, Duck, take us through your thing. We should probably wrap up in the next 10, 15 minutes.
Oh, look, I'll make it quick. My first 2 games, I completely forgot that the tank commanders shot on death. So on a 2-up, they shoot on death. At full ballistic skill, so not even overwatching. Just completely forgot they had the rule until game 3. My opponent goes, tank commanders shoot on death. I had to think, actually, yeah, that's why they're in the fucking list. So I looked back quickly on the previous 2 games and thought, every interaction where my tank commander died, he traded for an equal trade, where if I remember the shoot on death, he would have actually traded up in both those situations, and they were always over key objectives. So, one little rule that I forgot was a huge hole in the game plan. But moving forward, completely changed the way I used it. So against like the triple land fort Votan, I was able to wither 1 down over 2 turns of indirect, and then on turn 3 sort of come out and cripple another one and trade the Lehman Russ tank commander up. So I come out, cripple the fort, it moves, and I overwatch it. Now the fort comes out, kills the Lehman Russ, and then it shoots back at full ballistic skill, and it almost picks up a land fort when it's buffed. Because if I shoot in your turn, I get my lethals again, because I didn't move in your turn. So you've got to be very careful of when you kill the tank commander. And if you remember its rules, then it can always trade up. And it made the last 2 games a hell of a lot easier. I very could have easily been the other side and sort of stewed on it for the last 3 rounds and a game, and at the end of the event, if we missed out on the top podium by a couple of points, then I'd be kicking myself in the same way I'm sure Simon was after his game in round 4.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd say is quite healthy about what both you were saying is you're not tilting at your opponents, right? Like, you're not saying that they've done something that has provoked it. You're laying, I guess, the blame at your own feet for issues in relation to the game, forgetting rules. I think everyone does that. Duck, even people at your level, and it is quite challenging when that occurs, and I've experienced it myself. But I mean, I guess it's quite a different beast that when you're tilting an opponent who maybe does something or is, hasn't allowed you to do something like a small take back, anything like that, which has different, I think, more hostile dimensions. So I'd say, do you take some solace from that, Simon, in the sense that, yes, you're tilting, but you're tilting to improve yourself, I would say, more than at other people, which I think is a healthier way of approaching the game.
Yeah.
I think it goes directly into Simon's favourite buzzword, the growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, the pyramid scheme.
And yeah,
No. Look.
come sell our Herbalife product.
Yeah. So it's popularized nowadays by Jocko Willink, extreme ownership and things like that, right? But the best example of that is in Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, right? And the concept, and this goes back all the way down back to Stoicism and stuff like that, which is, what have you done to contribute to this situation? In essence, right? It's that mindset. Doesn't matter how unfair life has been to you, or in that, all where you are right now, and all the shit that's happened to you, you have in some way contributed to being in that situation. And I don't necessarily know if I embody that completely, but I definitely try to live up to that value, so to speak. It's like, and so talking about things that my opponent do, it's almost irrelevant. Like, they could be throwing feces at me, and it's like, that's unfortunate. But if I'm tilting at that, then I've let that tilt me, if you know what I mean. Like, I just focus on the things that
I'm going to test that theory when I come up. Like, yeah. I'm going to have a big bag of feces ready for you, buddy. So
excellent.
We'll see how far that goes.
Yeah, but the point is what are the things that I can control? And that's what all my conversation has been on, things that I personally control. I can't control if Vander rolls, 6 sixes against me. I can control my reaction to that, and having, 7 different backup plans and shit like that. You get the idea. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Mm.
Yeah, I do. And I think you can, to an extent, control the way that your opponent behaves by the way that you interact with them too. So I absolutely take your point in the way that you're approaching things. That's a very positive way, I think, to approach the game. But maybe that's, again, we're touching on a lot of interesting, I think, topics that could be for future episodes. Like, what do you do when you get an opponent and you're not enjoying yourself, and there's some problematic interactions and behaviours and so on. But yes, I think self-reflection is probably is a key to this. But I also think what I think we've got out of this as well is that you talk to other people, you talk to your team, it's people around you that are supportive to assist you in sort of getting through these issues and making you feel a bit better about what has occurred. Otherwise, these things fester, don't they, if you don't do that? And I think that's the good thing about having a team environment, is you have that opportunity, even in the 5-mans and without a coach, where you can sort of, as you say, sort of reinvent yourself in the next game and come back better.
Yep, 100%. Awesome.
Well, you will tilt forever if you don't deliberately reflect and make a change.
Yep.
You'll keep doing it, and you'll keep doing it, and you'll keep doing it. You really do have to take the time that you have, Simon, and step back from it, think about it, talk about it, figure out what the hell happened, and ask yourself if you want that to happen again. Otherwise, you just keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You passively engage in a process that you don't enjoy. You have to be active and deliberate.
I think that wraps us up, guys. Like, thank you very much for coming on board, Conor, for your first episode, and Vander for your, as always, wise words.
Pleasure.
Duck, your examples have been fantastic, as always. So, do you want to wrap us up, Duck? Your wrap-ups are always good.
Sure. Look, if you're still with us, I think we're probably running on 2 hours for this one, so thank you for sticking with us to the end. Thanks to the boys for coming on. Not very often we get more than one of the Ethos boys on so thanks for your time. Thanks for everyone who we played against on the weekend. We had 5 good games, 5 good rounds. We look forward to the next event. As always, give us a like, give us a share. Please the algorithm gods for us, just to get us more viewable to the Queensland and Australian scene. We'd love to get a bit more of an interstate presence, and and branch out. You know, we might end up doing a bit more travelling in the next year when the tournament scene spices up a bit more, and other states start running big events, and then you might have some Queenslanders migrate south. But until then, see you next time.
See you guys.
Yeah, I'll see you all on the battlefield.